Hi, I'm Seamless, and this is the 25th 75K tutorial. We're 1/3 way through this whole thing. This one was requested by rguru, and this is an Asa song called Arcane. And it was the background synth that shows up at 2 minutes, and it's this sound.
This is what I want to show you.
Now, if you've seen my how to synth video on bells, this is going to be very interesting. You might be wondering, what does this have to do with bells? Even if you thought that it's like, okay, well, it's kind of bell-ish, but I mean, there's obviously else going on with there. And that's because if you listen to the song and you keep going at that section, you kind of hear that sound kind of morphs into having some bell-ish qualities. It could very well be a layer, but I decided that I wanted to see if I could make something that sounds like that and morph into have bell morphing controls entirely contained within one citrus. And my result was this. Which is neat. I guess it's a little bit louder than it needed to be. Sounds a little bit better. This is a big old 7 chord, but there's actually kind of a lot of stuff happening in here, which you might be thinking, well, of course there is. So I'm actually making use of something called the unison index mapping, which is happening across some of these oscillators. Because in the unison side, you can see that I have 9 voices. The volume's all the way up, and there's some panning, but the pitch and the phase are not doing anything, which is to say that pretty much in regular unison, nothing would be happening. However, pitch unison index mapping is where you're able to control a parameter's position based on unison voice. So, for example, I am actually causing just the slightest bit of pitch unison going on in the first operator, for example, and I think some of the other ones as well. But it's essentially having different unison profiles per each oscillator. I'm also controlling the phase for appropriate ones. The first and the second oscillator are the ones that are creating the bells. If I get rid of the 2 filters and the 2 effects on the filters, we get bells. Now, I mentioned in my how to synth video on bells, and the big part about making bells and making metallic sounds in general is that you want to create enharmonic tones, which is to say tones that are not rigidly in a harmonic pitch. And to do that, what I've done is I just have a sine wave that's going out, not a lot's happening to it, and then I have, and this guy is basically just holding down the fort. It's just a tone coming out. Just sine waves. And the interplay you're hearing right now is actually just from the chord. And then the other guy is where all the bell stuff's coming from. And the way that this is working is that I have a tone, and it has a particular position. I don't believe I'm using it. No, but I am using the other guy. No? Well, it's FM. I'm FMing this sine wave by a very not in pitch sine wave. Actually, they're both not quite sine waves. You can see that there's a little bit of, I add a little bit of tension to them, making it like this one almost triangle wave and making this one a little bit more of a sine wave, which means that there's more harmonics in play against each other. And because of this very slightly off pitch selection here, because like even numbers, like just 6, that's regular pitch, it's not, you know, an octave, but it's normal. And this is just right off of it a little bit. And that's causing it to phase cancel in the FM, which is giving us that shaky kind of motion there. Now, you saw me mess around with this. And that's because in the envelope, I have a pitch envelope set up, and I should probably do this so that it's just an octave higher. And this means that when you move this knob around, it changes how much space there is between the octave and the center and the bottom here. By default, it's just 1 octave, but you can go all the way up to 4 octaves and go all the way back down to nothing. So you can use that to control the pitch. And I'm doing that because I'm already doing 2 things that are specific with the X and Y mod. The X mod is controlling essentially the volume of the bells. And the Y is controlling what's going on underneath all this, which is this filter business. So down here we have almost super saw. It's almost a saw, and I am using the unison index mapping to cause super saw-ish behavior and to pitch and a phase. So just manually making a unison like that. And then on the side over here, I have I think noise. Yeah, this is just a noise oscillator going into 2 filters. And now the first filter is just it's a bandpass, the cutoff and the resonance, and I don't believe I'm missing. Yeah, so I'm moving the resonance and the cutoff of I think both of these. Nope, just that one. And yes, both of these. No, just that one. Yeah, so I'm moving the resonance and the cutoff of this guy, which is changing the shape and position of the bandpass just so that it moves when you play it. And then the 5th one is static, so it's giving us it's kind of sticking in the range of where the kind of the feel comes from. And that is vague as that sounded. That's really just up to you as to where that is. Both of these are being controlled by the Y mod. So that you can kind of decide how you want to automate it moving around. And then when the 2 of them combined, and then with the 3rd parameter, the pitch. You can make pretty jangly fun times. And you probably want to EQ this as well. It's pretty mid-heavy and some of the higher frequencies would sound better, but I just wanted to contain all of this inside a single. Actually, I could do that. I can EQ it, and I forgot entirely about this. I have never once in my life ever used that EQ for any reason whatsoever. So now I have. You can see here that there is an off, out plus effects, out, and effects. So you can EQ either the out, the main out, or the effects, because the effects are 100% wet, which means that the combination of dry and wet has to be a combination of there being a dry and a wet out, 2 different outs. So controlling them both at once means I had to select both out plus effects, which means that's what this EQ is doing. What you see me doing there is that this is a parametric EQ. What a parametric EQ is where there is a parameter that you can control the EQ. There's 3 bands, and there's a high pass, a low pass, and a band. And then what the parameter is the frequency that you're on, and then the bandwidth of that particular frequency. This, like, you might be used to the parametric EQ too, and like this actually is still a parametric EQ, but it has more in common with a graphic equalizer. Which is to say that if you've ever seen an equalizer that looks like a giant mixer, it has like 1,000 of these things. It's where you create the EQ curve based on fixed bands. The bands and the bandwidths are all fixed, and so this means that you create the curve that you would be creating, you know, in this kind of an EQ. That's why it has more in common with that. But it is still a parametric EQ in the sense that you have a gain for each parameter, each like main node, and then you have the frequency position and then the bandwidth. This sort of thing is like in sort of the hardware world. You either have a graphic EQ or a parametric EQ. In parametric EQ, you're doing more or less blind, which is why the graphic EQ is called a graphic EQ, because you have a graphical representation of the frequency spectrum. Whereas the parametric EQ, you're doing entirely by ear, which is why another reason why the parametric EQ has more in common with the graphic EQ, because its overall point is that you're able to see more or less what you're doing a lot easier. Most equalizers have that kind of functionality to them, especially ones made these days. Even parametric, this is a parametric EQ as well, and at its core, you know, because it has the same sort of 3 parameter setup, but like it still has more in common with the graphic EQ just because you can see what you're doing, which is an important aspect of doing things. Anyway, that was just a bit of a sidetracking definition of some things. But yeah, just remember this is all being contained entirely within this patch. And it's not super close to the original guy, but like to do that kind of, like an easier version of that is just like a super saw, and then you filter it, and then you reverb the shit out of it, and then you get more or less that. But then later on, the sort of the mellowish quality is probably another sound just not added on top of that. This is me just trying to show off with Citrus. Anyway, if you have any questions about this, please let me know. This will be available in the download description of this video. If you'd like to make a request yourself, please do so in the Reddit thread, also in the description of this video. Requests made anywhere else will be ignored. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and as usual, have a nice day.